Open an Indian passport, look at the country's currency, or examine any government document, and you are immediately greeted by the official state seal, 4 lions standing back to back. The visual identity of the Republic goes even deeper. The spinning blue wheel sitting at the exact center of the national flag is the Ashoka chakra. These symbols anchor the modern Indian state, yet they belong to a man who ruled over 2 millennia ago. The standard historical legend begins with a tyrant. Emperor Ashoka originally earned the title Chanda Ashoka, the fierce Ashoka. In 261 BCE, he launched a massive, ruthless military campaign to subjugate the independent state of Kalinga. The story goes that walking through the aftermath of his victory, he witnessed 100,000 dead. Overcome with immediate, crushing guilt, he supposedly repented on the spot, converted to pacifist Buddhism, and vowed never to wage war again. Yet physical evidence and deeper textual records reveal a much more complex ruler. He preached absolute nonviolence while simultaneously maintaining a massive royal harem, enforcing the death penalty, and holding the subcontinent in an iron grip. The timeline of his epiphany is contradicted by the very text he left behind. In Minor Rock Edict 13, he admits to being a lay follower for over 2.5 years without much spiritual progress. The transition was a slow, deliberate evolution. The philosophy he ultimately embraced was Dhamma, a broad moral code emphasizing civic duty, social responsibility, and religious tolerance over strict monastic rituals. The Mauryan Empire was far too massive and culturally diverse to control indefinitely through military force. By promoting a shared ethical framework, he created a unifying ideology to govern a fractured subcontinent. This diagram outlines the Mauryan administration. To enforce his new moral code, Ashoka created an entirely new class of state bureaucrats called the Dhamma Mahamatras. They operated alongside generals and tax collectors to monitor religious tolerance and administer public welfare. The state treasury began funding massive infrastructure projects. They planted shade trees along trade routes, dug wells, and established hospitals for both humans and animals. The metric for imperial success shifted from territory conquered to the physical well-being of the citizens. He turned this internal policy outward. Ashoka dispatched state-funded missionaries far beyond his borders, reaching deep into Sri Lanka and Central Asia to spread Buddhist teachings. By backing these emissaries with the full wealth of the Mauryan treasury, he utilized a highly effective form of soft power diplomacy. This calculated state sponsorship elevated Buddhism from a local philosophy into a major global religion. Delivering these new state policies to millions of illiterate subjects across a massive landmass required a medium that could survive the elements and command immediate respect. He commissioned massive stupas, like this one at Sanchi. They housed sacred relics and served as centralized hubs for religious pilgrimage. He also erected 50-ton sandstone pillars. Quarried from single blocks of stone and dragged hundreds of miles, they were topped with symbols like lions and wheels to project royal authority into the provinces. These monuments functioned as permanent, state-sponsored propaganda. They were physical billboards that anchored the emperor's moral authority directly into the landscape. Yet the man broadcasting universal compassion maintained a strictly controlled private court. He spent considerable time in his Orodana, a massive royal harem containing hundreds of women. His early consorts, like Devi, were largely abandoned once he secured power. Women in his court were treated as political commodities, often kept behind curtains merely to listen to religious teachings. Literary legends hint at a terrifying temper. According to the Ashoka text, when a group of women mocked his rough skin, he ordered 500 of his own concubines burned alive. He also refused to dismantle the state's capacity for violence. He kept the death penalty intact and relied heavily on an advanced network of spies to monitor his officials and citizens. The father of his people ruled as a patriarchal absolute monarch. His empire, despite its progressive social welfare policies, relied entirely on stark human inequalities to function. Shortly after his death in 232 BCE, this highly centralized utopian bureaucracy splintered. The massive expense of his public works and a bloated administration caused the Mauryan Empire to collapse. His specific achievements faded from public memory for nearly 2 millennia. It wasn't until 19th-century archaeologists deciphered the Brahmi script on his ruined pillars that the scale of his rule was rediscovered. When India gained independence in 1947, founders bypassed thousands of years of intervening history to select the Sarnath lion capital as their official state emblem. Emerging from colonial rule, a newly formed, highly diverse nation needed a functional blueprint for unity. They found it in his ancient model of secularism, peace, and righteous duty. His true genius lay in recognizing that the most enduring power a state can project is the moral imagination. He built an ideological framework so resilient that it serves as the identity of over 1 billion people today.